Hello. Okay, so a big part of never running out of things to say is being able to talk about yourself. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to talk about yourself. A lot of people struggle with this because they feel like their lives are boring and they have nothing to share, but that is simply not true. I know talking about yourself can be scary and kind of weird and awkward, but in this video, I'm going to teach you a few simple ways to open up a little bit and talk about yourself. Now, the first and biggest thing that you need to do when you start talking about yourself is to share your opinions. This is really, really important because this is how you form connections with other people. The biggest mistake people make in conversations is not expressing their opinions. And instead, we say stuff like, it was okay, I don't know. And the problem is that nobody connects with it was okay. Nobody connects with I don't know. So it's important to share your opinions, or there's nothing that people can connect with. Even if your opinion is I don't really care, that's better than not sharing at all. I know it can be scary and you don't want to be judged, but on the flip side, if you don't share, it keeps people from being able to connect with you. So sharing opinions on things allows people to feel like they get to know you, and then as a result, they'll remember you. If you don't have an opinion, you're basically just going to be lost in the noise. A key thing for speaking freely is not being threatened by different opinions. So when you're with a bunch of people, yes, they will have opinions and you will have opinions that are different, but that's okay. It's just a normal part of conversation. Okay, so it might take some time for you to come up with this stuff because you might be just used to keeping your opinions to yourself and kind of holding it back. But a good place to start is to just start out with a notebook and a pencil and just sit down somewhere alone by yourself. And just really start to think about some really simple things. So make 2 columns and label one likes and dislikes. And then just write it all down. List out the things that you like in one column and then the things you don't like in the other column. What foods, what kind of music, what type of people, hobbies, activities. The first step here is figuring out what you like and what you don't like. Now, this is just a really simple first step, but what we're doing here is we're learning about what you like and what you don't like so that you can share your opinions more easily with people in conversation. Next, when you talk about yourself, make sure to use emotional words. So that means instead of just saying neutral things and saying just the facts, share how you feel about stuff. It doesn't have to be complicated or hard. Just add some emotional words when you're describing stuff. So for example, instead of saying something like, I had the burger, when someone asks you what you ate, instead, say something like, I loved the burger. Best thing I've had all week. So, do you see how much more that allows people to connect with you? Just like with sharing your opinions, sharing emotions helps people get to know you and connect with you. Also, along the same lines, instead of just giving the plain facts, give a little more detail. So if someone asks you something like, where do you work? Instead of saying, I work at a marketing company, which is just the bare facts, add a little more detail and say something like, I work at a marketing company in the city. Basically, I figure out how to sell stuff. And just like how you're always looking for threads when people are talking, when you give people a little more detail, you give the other person threads that they can work with. And finally, the very best way to talk about yourself is to tell a mini story. It doesn't have to be a long or dramatic story, so just mini stories can do amazing things. Stories are great because when you tell a story, it takes people on a journey with you. Think about any movie that you love. You know the characters, you understand them, you see their progress. The purpose for storytelling is to give people a look into who you are, just like when you watch a movie, and see what you see. If they understand you and get it, then the story is such a powerful thing. And for stories, there's a universal structure for any great story that's been used for ages, and you can see it in every movie and TV show that you watch. And just like how every story has a start, middle, and ending, every great story has this structure. Okay, it goes like this. First, a setup, then a conflict, and then a resolution. So let's look specifically at how this works. Okay, so all three parts are going to create what's called a story arc. And every time you tell a story, this is the basic structure you're going to follow. And this is all you're going to do. So first, there's the setup. And remember that every story has a backstory. So the setup is going to be the key information that people need to know to appreciate the rest of the story. Okay, so just the key background stuff. Make sure it's really brief and concise. Some people even do this in just one sentence. And then, very early on, you introduce the conflict. Every story needs a conflict. And it's also important to tell this as soon as possible because it lets people know why they should care and listen to the rest of your story. A conflict is something like good versus evil, man versus nature, man versus woman, man versus himself. It can be whatever, or it can even be some silly things like dog versus poop. I don't know. And as the conflict continues, you can see that the line goes up and the story builds and works towards the climax, which is that high point at the very top where the story gets the most intense. And then finally, there's the resolution. One of the worst things you can do is to stop at the climax. It's going to drive people crazy. Every story needs an ending. So the resolution lets people have closure. And basically, it's an ending to the conflict. It doesn't necessarily have to be a happy ending or a funny ending, but it does need an ending. All right, so I'm just going to tell you a story using this story arc structure. So about 8 years ago, I wanted to build more muscle, so I started going to the gym a lot. And one day I was lifting 55-pound weights, and I went to go drop them on the floor, but little did I know there were weights right there next to me, and my right middle finger got caught in between the two weights and was smashed. And it didn't even really hurt, but when I looked at it, the nail was gone, and my finger looked like a grape that was smashed open. It was like skin and flesh dangling everywhere. And then so I walk up to the counter, and the receptionist screams when she sees all the blood and runs away. And then I look at my cousin. He's trying to talk to me, but I can't even hear anything. My vision starts blurring. And then I'm like, oh no, I think I'm going to pass out. And then next thing you know, I'm in the arms of a girl. I guess she caught me when I fainted. And then she says, I got you. And I'm like looking up at her. I felt like I was in a Disney movie and I was the princess or something. And it was pretty hilarious. And yeah, the ambulance came, and then I went to the hospital, and it took me about 2 months to finally heal. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy experience. So yeah, do you see how that works? The story arc structure is something that once you know how to do, it's pretty easy to follow, and this is how you can ensure that you always tell a great story. Okay, so in summary, here are the main things that you can do to talk about yourself. Share your opinions, use more emotional words, give a little more detail, and finally, tell a mini story.